Since the lockdown began, migrant workers across the country desperately trying to get back to their native states. In Maharashtra's Navi Mumbai, a group of desperate migrant workers tried to go back home by booking a ride in an overpacked truck. But their journey lasted all of 6 kilometers. Our correspondent Divyesh Singh tells you why and shows you what he saw.
कहाँ जा रहे हो आप लोग?
A group of around 40 to 45 migrant workers packed like sardines, not in a tin, but in a truck.
यहाँ पे सर जी कपड़े का काम करते थे, अभी गांव से आके हमको 15 दिन हुआ तभी लॉकडाउन चालू हो गया। अभी बीवी बच्चे को कैसा खिलाएंगे? देखिए बच्चे को छोटे आपने गोद में लिए, एक बच्चा उधर लेके गोद में बैठी है।
Most of these migrants were working in Navi Mumbai and they say they paid between 2 to 3,000 rupees per person to get a seat on this truck to salvation.
सर हमारे जैसे हम लोग ट्रांसपोर्ट का गाड़ी चलाते हैं, जो ये ड्राइवर है क्या बोले तो किसी माध्यम से परिचय हुआ तो मेरे को किसी तरह नंबर इनका मिला, क्योंकि मैं भी एक ड्राइवर हूँ। ड्राइवर मेरे को परिचय रहता ही रहता है। मेरे को नंबर मिला है, बोले इधर से इधर जा रहे हैं, अगर चलना तो आ जाओ। हम लोग तुरंत पैसा देंगे।
कहाँ से कहाँ जा रही थी
ये गाड़ी सिद्धार्थ नगर जा रही है।
अभी क्या सेठ मेरे को जवाब दे दिया, बोलता है रहने का है रहो, जाने का है जाओ। मेरे पास पैसा है नहीं, अभी कंपनी खुलेगा तब पैसा मिलेगा।
अभी हम लोग का तो 3-3 हज़ार रुपये लिए थे।
तो मालिक है ना उसका।
The desperation of these people are apparent. With women and children in tow, they were ready to set out on an uncertain journey towards what turned out to be a dubious destination.
उधर रोका, गाड़ी वो आगे रोका, आगे से वो भाग गया, चाबी भी लेके भाग गया।
पुलिस ने गाड़ी भगाई नहीं उसके पीछे?
गाड़ी ने भगाई।
Some 6 kilometers into the journey, the driver of the truck saw a police checkpoint blocking the road ahead. The driver fled, abandoning the truck and its miserable human cargo by the road.
Images that, as I said, should shake our collective conscience. As the migrant crisis rages, Congress MP Rahul Gandhi today demanded an immediate transfer of 7,500 rupees each into the accounts of daily wagers, a Nyay-like scheme. The BJP claims a package has already been announced and the Congress should fact-check before firing accusations. Listen in to this face-off.
First broad thing that we are saying is take the idea of Nyay and start putting money directly into 50% of India's poor households. Just without thinking of it, just start doing that. It's not going to cost so much. 65,000 crores is what it's going to cost. And it will completely transform the way people are thinking about this current situation, their current situation. Because we have to understand, if you are on daily wages, you do not have choices. You simply do not have a choice. So we have to give them a choice.
राहुल गांधी जी ने जो आज जो कुछ कहा है उसमें कुछ भी नया नहीं है। वो उन्होंने अपनी सहज प्रवृत्ति यानी फितरत के हिसाब से बगैर अध्ययन किए, बगैर विषयों की जानकारी लिए हुए प्रेस के सम्मुख आने की अपनी पुरानी आदत के हिसाब से किया है। पैकेज की बात कही, 1,70,000 करोड़ का पैकेज पहले दिया जा चुका है। जिन लोगों के पास राशन कार्ड नहीं है उनको भी खाद्यान्न सुनिश्चित किया जा रहा है। इतना ही नहीं, यदि आप देखें तो 3 महीने के लिए उज्ज्वला सिलेंडर भी मुफ्त में देने का विचार चल रहा है, विचार कर दिया गया है। ये सब चीजें यदि उन्होंने पढ़ ली होती तो उन्हें ज्यादा समझ में आता।
That's right. Migrant anger is one of the most visible images of our time across the country. Even today, close to 3,000 migrants throng the Mangaluru Central Railway Station with their luggage. This after rumours that special trains would carry them back to their native places. In Jammu's Kathua, migrants resorted to vandalism over non-payment of dues. In Mumbai, migrant workers headed home as the first train from Mumbai left for UP. Migrant workers were stopped by the police while they were returning from Alwar to UP. We've looked at these images. We've tried to give you a sense of what's happening on the ground at the moment. Let's tonight raise the questions that I think need to be answered now. Is it time for a national policy on migrant labor? Can the centre and the states join hands to save migrant labor? Is the lockdown policy now lacking a human face? Are there too many flip-flops that are taking place? Do all migrants deserve train services point to point? Just some of the questions that we will raise tonight. Nalin Kohli is joining me of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Yogendra Yadav, National President Swaraj India is joining me. We hope to be shortly joined by Abhishek Manu Singhvi of the Congress. Nalin Kohli, the big question to you right away, right at the top. The question is, Where is the empathy, the compassion? Beyond the odd tweet, what has the government of India done that would suggest that they genuinely care for the migrant labor? Will Aurangabad, at least today, be a wake-up call, sir?
I was hearing your reports very closely, Rajdeep, and I'm sorry to begin on a note of a counter-allegation. But before that, may I also say that this shakes every Indian, will shake every human being. But now to come back to the political point and answer you straight, is that each one of those migrant labor you interviewed in Rajasthan and Maharashtra were crying that they received nothing there. So these were states also. I like the way that Mr. Narendra Modi is the favorite punching bag for anything and everything that happens under the sun. I'm surprised we haven't had a debate saying that he's responsible for the corona pandemic coming on this globe. And I'm really surprised about it.
I haven't mentioned Mr. Modi by name. I have only asked you what has the center done for migrant labor. I haven't mentioned, none of our stories mentioned Mr. Modi by name. We are asking you about what has the center done, sir, for migrant labor.
Of course they haven't. Yes. And I'm also answering it straight. I'm saying the reports show that each one of those miserable souls on the road was saying they got nothing in the states where they were. So let's first get back to the root of the problem. The first is, why are there migrant labor? There are migrant labor because primarily over 70 years, lopsided approach to development has created developed pockets of India on the western zone, while the east has remained broadly, largely underdeveloped, which was called the Bimaru states. Now, unless there is a better policy in terms of national rationalization of industrialized and economic activity, this is a real problem. That's a decadal problem and it needs to be addressed. The second is, how do you start reaching out to them? And I've sat on debates where fun was made of the fact that when Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana accounts were being opened, they are zero balance. What is the point of financial inclusion? Today, that's a backbone in terms of at least ensuring some delivery of cash into accounts, as is Ujjwala and as is the Food Security Act. Now there is, of course, move of seeing how can you take it beyond those who don't have ration cards. These are things that are being evolved. Let's come to the third. In every state where there is a migrant labor, they are contributing to the local economy. So this is not just a government of India problem. This is a national problem. And a national problem means everyone is to be involved. No one can wash their hands off in just finding the favorite punching bag.
It's not a question of favorite punching bag, Mr. Kohli. At the end of the day, it's the center that has to enunciate a policy. These images have played in for 6 weeks. And where I come back to it, beyond the odd tweet, what has the government of India done that will give the daily wage laborer a sense that he or she has a future?
Okay, let's answer that in two ways. The odd tweet, and now not looking at it as a number odd tweet, but the odd tweet really doesn't come from either the BJP or the government of India. For that, there's a national leader whose tweets are always odd. Let's come to the next part to it, which is about this national policy you're speaking about. Mr. Sardesai, if Parliament in its collective will does need to have a policy, they can so decide. But the bottom line goes, why is there like this? Maharashtra or the other states, among others, said that there should be movement of labor, give the trains. The trains came only because the state governments wanted it. A state that wants to enable the labor to move and a state that must be willing to take the labor to move. The fact is that the lockdown was to hold people there. This was a move that was done in a crisis. This crisis is not the creation of a political party, any political party or a government. This is a global pandemic. In that, the collective wisdom was of the government that go for a lockdown, which has seen its positives. Of course, that this is a situation that has mega challenges. The migrant labor is one part of it. There are other mega challenges too. So in all of it, the solution lies. Yes, of course.
No, yes, the solution lies. Complete, please.
You are asking something.
No, so solution lies in what? Please complete.
I lost my track, but maybe you'll find.
Okay, Yogendra.
I lost my track of what I was saying before that. So I think if I was talking about it, I'll come back to it. Why don't you go to Mr. Yadav in the meantime?
Yogendra Yadav, here is the government of India today saying, look, we need a national policy. We cannot make it. This is not about Narendra Modi, the individual, or the Modi government. This is about a national policy. This is about 70 years. in which migrant labor have been at the bottom of the pyramid, daily wage laborers, no one really has done enough for them. They don't have minimum wages, they don't have social security, they simply live day to day. And the lockdown in that sense has only brought this out into the open, the real unfolding tragedy of this country.
Rajdeep, I'm really sorry to see that this was seen in such a partisan way by Nalin Kohli ji. He tends to see things in a somewhat bigger way very often. Why does he choose such a partisan angle? That surprises me. I think we should begin by saying that what we saw today was a national shame. Shame for any Indian anywhere. This is not a natural calamity. We are looking at a man-made disaster. Man-made disaster for which everyone sitting in any position of power, state or center, should take responsibility. Specifically, this is a disaster at several levels. Number one, no careful, coherent policy on transportation. There is policy for first 40 days when the chances of transmission were very low. At that time, we decided not to have any transport. We do it 50 days later when the transmission charges are exactly 100 times. Number two, there is no adequate, even remotely adequate relief to the migrant worker. Mr. Kohli said there are these Yojana, Ujjwala, and so on and so forth. Kohli sir, if I'm a migrant labor sitting, for example, in Surat, what do I get? My ration card is back with my family in Jharkhand. I can't draw one paisa from one kilo food grain from that. Ujjwala, I would get benefit only if I have a cylinder. And Jan Dhan Yojana only if there is a female member in my family living here. And that only 500 rupees. How do you expect me to? You were very happy to think that Maharashtra and Rajasthan have been named. Tell me, is Gujarat any different? Tell me, is Karnataka any different? We must blame Maharashtra government for a very sorry handling, a very shoddy handling of everything. But I think we are looking at a much larger thing. And that is what we should be focusing at. And what we need, Rajdeep, is first of all, a clear and coherent policy on transport, namely a clear announcement. Every Indian who wants to go will be allowed to go, that it will be free, but you cannot choose the time. There would be, this may take 10 days, 15 days, but like railway reservation, you would get your time, and that we would also arrange for your transport up to the railway station. Unless you do so, these tragedies, Gujarat could have been Karnataka. Let's focus on the real thing and not make it such a narrow and partisan battle.
No, forget the partisan battle. Look at what is happening, Nalin Kohli, in state after state. No, 1 minute, Nalin Kohli. In state after state, instead of protecting the migrants today, labor policies are coming in place in Uttar Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, which essentially are giving employers the right to virtually sack their employees and their daily laborers with no protection. I come back to it. Nalin Kohli, how do you expect?
I'll answer both the things.
No, how do you expect in a country like this, an economy where migrant labor are living day to day with zero protection today, zero social protection? That's what's happened in the last 6 weeks. And that's why they're going back home.
Okay, so first to start with, normally Mr. Yadav sticks to theories and not the practical side of implementation. So now let's take the practical side of implementation. So what he has basically talked of is right at the beginning of the lockdown, what we essentially needed was a transportation policy that while a lockdown is operational, there should be trucks moving, buses moving, etc. to move people to take trains, perhaps other means of transport to travel across the country so that you have a lockdown with movement. Now that's a new theory, but of course, he's entitled as a thinker to come up with that. Let's come to your second part to it. I think we need to understand, Mr. Sardesai, that today, while we also need to be clearly concerned about that migrant labor, and nowhere am I underestimating the tragedy that we are seeing before our eyes. So don't think if I'm making a strong point to ward off criticism against me or my party, it means that I've lost my heart in seeing those heart-wrenching images on your television screen or in your reports or anywhere else. The fact of the matter is that you also need industry to run. Because if you don't have industry and if you don't have an economy, you're not going to get jobs. If you don't get jobs, you're constantly going to have people looking for jobs and therefore being on a daily wage. So instead of finding fault in everything that happens, we need holistic solutions.
I am asking
Let
you.
me give another example.
I am
when
asking
the National
you.
People's Register was spoken about, not you, Mr. Sardesai. Let me finish my point. Otherwise,
Yes.
I'll lose my track again like the last time. So the point I'm saying, when the National People's Register was being spoken of, it came out again and again. It's part of the census exercise. It is about ensuring and knowing where people are so benefits could go. At that time, it was all about CA, it was all about Muslims and Hindus and all that things. So in a sense, it's the same story as the Jan Dhan Yojana accounts. That if there is a mechanism being put in place, which was for a particular reason, criticized at that time, useful for a segment of people, if something else is also being thought about it, before criticizing, even those who wish to criticize it, if they would like to look at a bigger picture, perhaps we will not be partisan.
You know, Yogendra Yadav, you've been tracking this issue for a while. Let's be very clear. Has anyone, in your view, come up with a solution? What is the solution? Today, Rahul Gandhi, for example, says put 7,500 in people's accounts, almost like a Nyay minimum income scheme. Will that really be a solution to prevent people in a pandemic, in a lockdown like this, where they live in their 6x8 rooms being forced to practice social distancing? Is that really a solution? Direct cash transfer in your view?
Rajdeep, there is, of course, a need to reach money to the bottom of society. The real problem that we have, which is a practical problem that Mr. Nalin Kohli doesn't think I know about, the problem is that we actually do not have a mechanism in the country. The famous JAM mechanism evolved by the government is actually very inadequate right now. So even if Government of India tomorrow morning decides to send, say, 7,500 rupees to every bottom half of the society, there actually is simply no mechanism through which it can be sent. Therefore, I would limit it to somewhat limited points. Number one, if the government were to do specifically on reaching money to the poor, which is a very good idea, because actually that's the best way to regenerate the economy. What we need to begin by doing is assuring food security, ensuring that Manrega is expanded, that a similar version is created for Urban India, Urban Guarantee Program. These are all ways of sending money, not by way of cash, because we don't have a mechanism right now, but indirect ways of giving money to the people. But apart from that, we need a clear and coherent national policy on transportation. Yes, Mr. Nalin Kohli, if you think that lockdown with some movement is an absurd idea, then, sir, what you are doing right now in the country is absurdity, because that's exactly what is happening. Parts of a country are under lockdown and transport is taking place. But what I was saying was that if lockdown was delayed even by 3 or 4 days, and everywhere in the world it has happened with some notice, at the point when infection was so low, this would have been far wiser. Forget all that. Can we today simply say, make these 2 or 3 declarations? Number one, every Indian will be entitled to travel, like we are caring for our foreign Indians settled abroad or stuck abroad. We would extend the same courtesy and the same systematic nature to our Indians settled in India as well. We would create all these registrations have already taken place. Everyone who is registered would be allowed to go back to their state. There would have to be a sense of priority and sequence. Everyone can develop it. And that state governments will be responsible for reaching them up to the railway station. The central government will take the responsibility. This should be made clear, because even today, MHA circular does not say that. MHA simply says that Shramik trains are not meant for labor. If you read the wording of the MHA circular, it is meant only actually for tourists who got stranded, only for some pilgrims who got stranded, on occasional visitors. Have to have a clear policy, and I'm afraid there is no policy at the moment.
Let me ask you, Nalin Kohli, on transportation. No, just a simple question now. The simple question is that it is now 6 weeks since the lockdown. First, the lockdown within 4 hours was was put in place, so there was no time at the time for anyone to go back home. But in these 6 weeks, could not a policy have been evolved to ensure transportation in a calibrated manner? Was that not at all possible? Was it, should this not have been one of the priority issues of the government of India? The moment I will say this, you will say it's a punching bag. End of the day, someone has to be held accountable. Now, who is going to be held accountable, Mr. Kohli, when people are walking 500 kilometers to their homes?
No, as I said, I often find myself in debates, I'm not saying whether you are doing it or not, or I find myself in the middle of panels where the only person held accountable is always Narendra Modi ji, even when it is a responsibility in some cases of the state. Let's answer your question on transportation. 222 trains till yesterday took 2.5 lakh people there. Who's to do that? And there was a whole debate also, I'm sure, on your channel, as among others, which was about this, who's going to pay for it, when Government of India was paying 85% of it. And the states that were only charging from the labourer was Maharashtra and Kerala and Rajasthan, and Maharashtra refused to do it. In either case, all the other states, Telangana, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, paid for it, the balance 15%.
Yes.
And these were the national debates. Mr. Yadav, of course, fancily is pointing out to caring about the Indians who are abroad. Each one of them is paying between 18,000 to 1 lakh rupees to come back. So, I mean, after all, here the government was bearing, the government of India, 85%, and it was criticized on channel after channel because the president of one party decided to come and score a point without realizing her governments were the ones that were doing it. Let's also come to the other thing. Mr. Yadav, of course, since he's an ideator, he sat down and given a whole long thing about all that should be done. I'm asking just a simple question, which is being asked ever since Das Capital was written, and you had socialism and communism and all the likes. That where does the money come from? The whole point is everyone who comes up with their set of fancy ideas needs to also understand there is a mechanism which is called in the economy to work.
Are you telling me that we cannot organize trains?
Let me finish.
No, sir. Are you telling me at a time when money is being put into the PM CARES fund, are you telling me the government of India does not have money to provide point-to-point transportation?
Because I will not allow myself to lose the thought on the second time. I will not allow myself to lose my thought the second time.
Yes.
So therefore I'm saying my single and last point to end on that is that yes, this is a government over 6 years that has done a lot for the poor. Not that it is enough. A lot more needs to be done. But at the same time, for all the people who give a stretch of things on this side, need to also reflect and have suggestions to say, how do you create economic wealth that will be able to take care of those at the bottom of the pyramid? Because there is no economy in the world or a formula in the world that says just print the money and distribute the money and the economy will run. That's what socialism did and failed. Now what's your question, sir?
My simple question is, if the government of India, the mighty Indian state, does not have enough money to ensure railway travel for migrants to go home or to evolve a transport policy, then something, sir, is seriously wrong somewhere with the way both state and central governments in this country are run. Yogendra Yadav, let me give you a final word. Do you really see any solution? Do you really think Aurangabad is the final wake-up call? We seem to have had that.
As I said, it's a shame. And the reason why we are where we are is that we have invisibilized the migrant labor. And that is not a story of the last 50 days. I agree. That's a story of the last 75 years. We have invisibilized the migrant labor. But Rajdeep, in this debate, it's better if we focus on the current 50 days, the last 50 days, and what can be done in the next 50 days. Yes, wealth creation is a problem, which should be done. But where the money would come from, there's something called care. I thought it was there to care.
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Mr. Yogendra Yadav at that point, but clearly we've got
Just a final comment, Rajdeep, that Mr. Yadav has said something which I agree with.
Yes.
In the last 70 years, we have made the common Indian in that sense invisible. And that is a national tragedy that we all must feel the pain. No doubt about it.
Let's leave it there. I appreciate both of you joining me here on my face-off this evening. My take. The tragedy on a railway track near Aurangabad, where 16 migrant labourers were crushed to death, should haunt the national conscience. For over a month now, since the lockdown was enforced, we've been carrying images and stories of migrant workers and their families on a long walk back home. Sadly, there has been little compassion shown by the political class at the center and in the states. It is almost as if migrants are faceless citizens who simply do not have equal rights. Instead, the mighty state and most employers seem to view them as bonded labor with almost no social security or income protection, which is why Aurangabad should be a final wake-up call. A lockdown must have a human face. It cannot simply become a coercive instrument to widen inequalities on the ground. Maybe we all need to walk 500 kilometers across the country in the heat of summer to realize what it takes to keep body and soul together. This is the land of the Mahatma, my friends. The land of the Mahatma needs to rediscover its conscience before we get completely disconnected and invisibilize a real India.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.